Hello everyone, my name is Bloody Elevator, and we're back at it once again with Spire Knights. This time, we're attempting the Dreams and Nightmare mission. The armor loadout is a Chaos Cowl and Chaos Cloak, with the Swift Strike Buckler. The weapon loadout is a Polaris with a Dark Retribution, as the majority of enemies here will be weak to Elemental and Shadow. The Polaris is for dealing elemental damage, while the Dark Retribution is for dealing shadow damage. If I am correct, this is the last mission in the story mode. And it is used by Spire Knights players as a way to farm Radiance to level up your 5-star equipment, as you don't earn very much crowns or heat from this level. If you didn't realize, these are void enemies. These enemies can hit significantly harder and be more difficult to deal with than their standard counterparts that you're usually familiar with. The only thing you really need to watch out for are the swarm turrets and the void souls, as the turrets in the map can't be destroyed, but they do only fire one projectile at a time. The void souls, however, spawn indefinitely, and they always find a way to wedge themselves between you and the enemy you're about to perform a sword charge on. That being said, these enemies hit hard and don't really drop any loot, aside from hearts occasionally, so I would avoid any unnecessary combat if possible. You have to go through technically 5 stages, but the level before this one was just getting to the core and explaining the story. But the level that we're on right now is where the gameplay actually starts on, from Depth 25 to 28. This map can be difficult for first timers because you might get overwhelmed from the variety of enemies that you'll have to deal with. From what I've read on most Spire Knights guides on this specific level, you should use long-range weapons and explosives because you'll oftentimes have to deal with the void souls that do explode in your face from time to time, and they do have a tendency of getting in your way when doing a sword charge against an enemy. I had to learn that one the hard way. If you have a somewhat decent loadout for the Dreams and Nightmare map, this trek should only take about 10 to 20 minutes. It's not too difficult and it can be challenging if you're not prepared. So unless we are locked into a fight, then we'll have to do our best to rush through these enemies. If I'm correct, the first 2 levels after stepping into the core are randomized, and sometimes you'll get lucky and find your way. Other times, you'll be greeted with a very long map, where you may or may not have to find a key to get to the next depth. The second level before the treasure room is always the same. You just have to get to the end of one section of the map, go into a large room, press some buttons, and then you head into another room, where you have to do the exact same thing all over again, except in that instance, you have to defeat all the enemies, and there are multiple doors, so that one could take a while. I'm only grinding this level because I need Radiance to level up my 5-star equipment. Because the grinding does get kind of ridiculous once you reach 5 stars, due to how low the drop rates are on orbs and heats that you need for your 5-star items. Thankfully, you can run past the majority of the enemies of this level. Sometimes you might have to turn on the minimap viewer. The button to toggle that is on the map on the top right. It should be the smaller circle to the left of that. So the first 3 levels of the Dreams and Nightmare weren't too bad. You do get a partner with you, but they don't do very much, nor are they that strong. So if you want, you can just use them as a distraction while you look for the exit. And here we are, at the last part of the Dreams and Nightmare level, right before we can claim our Radiance. So this first part, we just need to press all these red circles, use your buddy over there as a distraction, while we deal with all these buttons. Once you open all the doors, head to the next room, and do essentially the same thing all over again, except this time, You now need to defeat every enemy here in order to unlock these doors. There are quite a few of them, so this might take a while. If you wanted to, you could grind for Radiance in the Vanaduk boss stage, but the problem with that is that Radiance don't drop until Death 27 and 28 on Elite, meaning that if you were to grind through Vana's boss stage for Radiance, you would have to go through at least half the stages and all the enemies that come with it before you get a chance at Radiance. In this stage, however, you don't earn as many crowns or heat, but at the end, you do receive a large amount of prize boxes that can usually net you a decent amount of Radiance. I'd say about 10 to 20 Radiance, more or less. So it's quite a grind, unless you're willing to either endure Vana's level for Radiance, or grinding through the Tier 3 arcade for a chance at Radiance, or even worse, saving up 700 energy to purchase a 50 pack of Radiance from the supply depot. Hopefully, you're lucky in farming in the amount of Radiance that you need, and not have to actually spend money on energy to purchase those Radiance. I did mess up the first half of this battle because it was me just not remembering how to properly deal with this room. I was doing my best by using the Polaris to push back enemies while avoiding Void Souls and the projectiles, and I was using the Dark Repulsar to deal damage to any enemies that I could find. After scrambling around for a few minutes, I eventually remembered how you're supposed to properly deal with this room. What you do is that you use some form of explosive, like in this case, the Dark Repulsar, to attack enemies while going in a counterclockwise direction, so you don't have to worry about the souls and the projectiles as much. Most of the enemies here will try to follow you, so I just planted as many Dark Repulsars as I could, while making sure that the enemies were following me. And it slowly works. And I just used the Polaris for what the Dark Repulsar couldn't remove. I did die a couple times, but I eventually learned from my mistakes, and we eventually cleared this room. Now that this room is cleared, let's head on down and collect our radiance. So you'll get a small story of what's happening here, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for radiance. So let's fast forward, and let's get right to it. Okay, so I think we got about 20 radiance from this endeavor. Let's head on out. If you enjoy this series, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if possible, share this video. It would really help out the channel. And that's all I have to share with you for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching.